Somewhere on Earth right now, someone is crying. A child who lost their favorite toy, a man sitting alone in his car, a woman hearing good news after years of waiting. Billions of tears are shed every year for completely different reasons, but every one of them points to the same mystery. Why are humans one of the only species that cry because of emotions? And why would evolution create something so strange? Because if you think about it, crying makes almost no sense. When an animal is in danger, it becomes stronger. Its senses sharpen. Its body prepares for survival. Humans do something different. We blur our own vision. Our breathing becomes irregular. Our face becomes red. And we openly advertise our vulnerability to everyone around us. On paper, crying looks less like a survival mechanism and more like a design flaw. Yet nearly every person who has ever lived has done it, which means there must be a reason, a very old one. And it begins with a strange fact about your tears. Most people think tears are just tears. They're not. Your body actually produces 3 different types. The first are basal tears. These constantly coat your eyes and keep them healthy. Without them, your eyes would dry out and become damaged. The second are reflex tears. These appear when smoke enters your eyes, or when you cut onions. Their job is simple: flush out anything that shouldn't be there. But the third type is where things get weird. Emotional tears, the tears you cry when you're heartbroken. The tears you cry when you're overwhelmed. The tears that appear when life becomes too much. Scientists discovered that emotional tears are chemically different from the other two. They contain higher concentrations of stress-related substances and hormones. Your body isn't simply leaking water, it's responding to emotion with an entirely separate biological process. Which raises an obvious question. Why? Why would evolution spend millions of years developing emotional tears? What possible advantage could they provide? For a long time, nobody really knew, and some scientists still disagree. But one explanation has become increasingly popular. To understand it, imagine yourself 100,000 years ago. No cities, no hospitals, no police, no technology, just small groups of humans trying to survive in an incredibly dangerous world. You couldn't survive alone. A broken leg could kill you. A serious illness could kill you. Being abandoned could kill you. Human beings didn't become successful because we were the strongest animals. We became successful because we cooperated better than almost any species on Earth. And cooperation depends on communication. The problem is that some forms of suffering are invisible. If someone is bleeding, everyone can see it. If someone is starving, everyone can see it. But what about emotional pain? How do you communicate that? How do you signal that you need help? One theory suggests that crying became the answer. Because tears are difficult to fake. A smile can be forced. Words can be manipulated, but genuine crying immediately communicates something important. Something is wrong. I need support. I need protection. I need connection. And that signal works remarkably well. Research consistently shows that people who witness someone crying often experience increased empathy. They become more willing to help, more willing to comfort, more willing to cooperate. In other words, tears may function as a social glue, a biological shortcut that strengthens human relationships. And that idea becomes even more interesting when you look at babies. A newborn baby is one of the most helpless creatures on Earth. A baby can't walk, can't hunt, can't defend itself. Without adults, it dies, which means human infants evolved to be extremely good at getting attention. Crying is one of their most powerful tools. The sound is almost impossible to ignore. Your brain is literally wired to respond to it. Researchers have found that infant crying activates regions associated with attention, emotion, and caregiving. Nature designed it that way, because babies that successfully attracted care survived, and babies that didn't often didn't. But here's what's fascinating. We never completely outgrow it. The behavior changes, the reasons change. Yet, the underlying signal remains. Even as adults, tears often appear when we need connection most. Not only during sadness, but during relief, gratitude, love, and even happiness. Think about that for a moment. People cry at funerals, but they also cry at weddings. People cry after devastating losses, but they also cry when they finally achieve something they've worked toward for years. If crying were only about sadness, none of that would make sense. Something deeper is happening. Some psychologists believe tears appear when emotions become too large for normal communication, when words stop being enough, when the brain essentially says, This feeling matters more than language can express. And maybe that's why some of the most meaningful moments in life involve tears. Holding a newborn child, saying goodbye to someone you love, reuniting after years apart, receiving news that changes everything. The tears aren't caused by one specific emotion, they're caused by intensity. The emotional system reaching a point where ordinary expression no longer works. But there is another side to this story, because crying isn't always comfortable. In many cultures, people are taught to suppress it, especially men. For centuries, crying has often been associated with weakness. Self control was admired, emotion was hidden. Tears became something people apologized for, something embarrassing, something to overcome. Yet, biology doesn't seem to agree, because tears continue showing up anyway. Generation after generation, culture after culture, civilization after civilization, no matter how much people try to eliminate them. And maybe that's because crying was never designed to make us look strong. It was designed to remind us that we aren't meant to face everything alone. Humans spend a lot of time pretending to be independent, but history tells a different story. Every city, every nation, every invention, every achievement exists because people depended on one another. The strongest human trait has never been individual power. It's collective support, and tears may be one of the oldest signals that help create it. But there is one final reason crying fascinates scientists, because unlike most behaviors, it sits directly between biology and meaning. The chemicals are real, the hormones are real, the neural activity is real, but the experience itself feels deeply personal. When you cry, you're not thinking about evolution. You're not thinking about stress hormones. You're thinking about your life, your memories, your fears, your hopes, your relationships. And that's what makes tears so unusual. They are biological, but they are also profoundly human. A wolf can feel pain, a bird can feel fear. Many animals experience emotions, but humans seem to have turned emotion into something else. Stories, art, music, poetry, religion, philosophy, entire civilizations built around feelings that are impossible to measure. Tears sit at the center of that strange transformation, the point where biology becomes meaning, the point where chemistry becomes experience, the point where survival becomes humanity. And maybe that's why crying has survived for so long. Not because it's a flaw, not because evolution made a mistake, but because vulnerability itself became one of our greatest strengths. The ability to signal suffering, the ability to receive comfort, the ability to connect, the ability to remind each other that none of us are carrying life's weight completely alone. Somewhere on Earth right now, someone is crying. A child, a stranger, someone celebrating, someone grieving. Someone whose entire world just changed, and although the reasons are different, every tear carries the same message. A message that has existed for thousands of generations. A message older than language, older than civilization, older than history itself. That being human was never about facing everything alone. It was about finding someone who would notice when you couldn't.